Start with is my early education bill. Now, last year there was a lot of discussion and debate on this topic about whether or not it made sense to have a bill focused on early education or not. Whether or not that was something that, as a state, we would really be able to solve. And over the last year, from my perspective in participating in the Education Task Force, my opinions and feelings about early education have only been reinforced, not diminished. What we have heard from a research perspective relative to early education for very specific targeted audiences is that it does have a significant impact and effect on the educational skills gap that exists for these kids. And specifically, I'm talking about what we heard were kids that qualify as kids in families of intergenerational poverty and kids where English is a second language and there is economic disadvantage. And that last part is critical, and where there is economic disadvantage. There are ELL kids with fantastic familial support, with great educational levels, and they don't need any help whatsoever. There's no need for them to be provided access to preschool. But where that economic disadvantage exists, especially where there's intergenerational poverty, there is clear evidence, longitudinal scientific research over multiple decades that show that these kids are in fact at a disadvantage from an academic perspective because their parents are also.
Do you have a bill number? I just see the name.
It's not available yet.
Okay.
I'm still working on a couple of tweaks. It should be available in a couple of days. However, with that being said, last year I approached this legislation, I feel, in an ineffective way. I tried to put too much uniqueness into the bill and how we funded it. I wasn't clear enough in the target audience that we went after. In fact, it was available to anyone that had an economic disadvantage. And that was a major concern for many groups. I had resistance from all sorts of far-right organizations.
Like me.
Oh, yes. And individuals like Milo. who had legitimate serious concerns about the scope of the project and then the influence of private-public partnerships from a funding perspective on educational outcomes. And so I made the decision to drastically simplify my bill by targeting a very specific group of intergenerational poverty kids, which are defined by statute, are tracked in our our state welfare system. It's very easy for us to know who they are, and where English is a second language with an economic disadvantage. It's about 6,000 kids in the state, who, by the way, represent the largest high-cost educational student base in the state when it comes to special education cost. It's drastically expensive. It's in the neighborhood of $30 to $40 million just for this group of money that is spent by the state annually on special education for these individuals. And the other sad statistic, the other sad reality is that this same population is the population that is dropping out of our education system, that is not graduating, that are non-proficient in almost every topic, that cause an enormous amount of burden inside our education system. Teachers having to spend time helping them. And so it's just an enormously challenging area. Yes, sir?
So what you're saying then, in the long run, is we'll pay less because we pay a little bit more.
Correct.
Because they're already a drain.
It's already an enormous drain. Yeah, and most of these are citizens. And this is not, let me be clear on that. That's a very sensitive issue that came up last time. My bill did not restrict it to citizens of our state, right? It was very difficult to do so. But in this definition, these individuals are all tracked, and it's very easy for us to identify legal status. So I'm not going to be put in a position, I believe, to have that challenge this year.